Nick here, Revs Customs. Today we're going to have a look at our 3-wheel drive build. Yes, that is right, it's going to be 3-wheel drive, 3 wheels. So up the front we've got an old, I believe it was a Yokomo drift front end that we got given. That's going to run back from a dry shaft back to about this point, and then we've got this little converter made up which will spit it out into belt, which will bolt up in there, and then it'll run a belt back from here back to the rear end. We've tried to keep the gearing fairly similar front to rear, but obviously with a couple of different pulleys we can adjust it sort of get a counter steer set up. We don't know what's going to work, so it's a little bit of trial and error. So we've gone with an IFS front end on it as well, just because why not? It'll work well with what we've got in the back. Keeps it all, you know, quite nice, compact and low. Up the front, you may notice if you've run an MSD, this is the FFX from their front engine build, which we picked this because it kept our arms quite wide, which allowed us to sort of clear everything and still get pretty good lock. Remembering this is a driven front end as well. These are some universals that we got. I believe they're for an HSP. They're actually adjustable. We did have to lathe these down a little bit, and we had to buy these little cups in here, are some aftermarket ones we had to buy as well to ensure that these didn't pop out at full lock. Now the hubs are just some cheap upgrades for a D4, along with the bottom arms being a D4 arm as well. And up top is a custom arm that I've just made up. And also the suspension blocks I've just printed up, front and the rear ones here, obviously so I can get them to the right height. Now the servo we've sort of mounted back where it normally would be on the FFX. This is a servo that we got donated to us as well for the build. If you guys want to check it out, this is it here. Link will be in the description if you want to pick one up. It's a nice alloy unit, fully USB programmable. Now these are not exactly designed for drift, but there's a lot of parameters you can adjust to get it to how you like it on the USB programmer. Now towards the back we've got a swing arm. The swing arm is a very similar setup to what we ran on our 3-wheel buggy, just shortened up and sort of just made a little bit more compact to suit. In the back we've just got a Rocket 10.5 turn, a little bit more than what we would normally run, but we got given this for a good price, so that's what we're running. So let's get this pulled apart and get this made into a carbon fibre chassis. Okay, so we've got most of it apart now. We're going to start with the rear end. All our final parts have been printed in a PETG carbon fibre from Monocle here in Australia. This is the filament here if you guys want to check it out. We're just giving this a go. Something a little bit local, easier for us to pick up. So we've got ceramic bearings that fit into here. We went ceramic because, you know, this is a double-ended sort of pivot point and it's also for the driveline, so we wanted to make sure that it was nice and smooth. And also our swing arms printed in the same carbon PETG, prints very, very clean as you can see. This is done in 0.2 layer heights. So once again, ceramic bearings go in. They're pretty good at being a little bit tighter fit, but as you can see, one just fell out. But once it's all bolted together, it's pretty good. So we're going to make sure we fit. We've got a couple of spots here for some nuts. They sort of just press fit into here, makes it a little bit easier, so not relying on all just sort of self-tap ones, which they are at the bottom. And then we've got these little pieces here which make up the engine plate and also the shock mounts. So this one runs straight through that little slot. Very much the same as how the the buggy was, should I say. Then you have the outer one. Then you have some long ones that'll pass through and self-tap into the back of it. Now the main reason we did this, just to give, since it's quite thin through that little side piece to clear the motor, just to ensure that that shock tower is nice and stable and it won't flex. Obviously it doesn't have as much load as it would, you know, if it was a buggy or something, so we probably over-engineered that a little bit, but we want to be sure that it's going to be solid. And you can see these like zero play in our suspension arm. It's very nice and free, so we're very happy with that. So we can get this bolted down to the chassis for now. So that gives you an idea. We did some cutouts. They're pretty a little bit unnecessary, just trying to, you know, make it a little bit lighter because we can. I just had a little bit of a moment. Just couldn't quite get these little nuts in for some reason. The ones in here, we had to file one side off to make them fit, but they fit in there nicely. It's super smooth with the ceramic bearings in place. You get to shim everything out to make sure that the belts all line up. You might have noticed the rear end was upside down in the last one. Can't remember how my own car goes together. So now we've got that on, we can start bolting the front end back on. So it's pretty much going to come back on as it came off. All the final parts are already printed. We did that a while ago just to ensure that we weren't getting any flex, any weird spots, to make sure that it was all going to work. So we were going to do some nice blue screws throughout, but we decided, got to draw the line somewhere with some of these builds. Especially when, a lot of this coming out of my own pocket. This one we've only had a few parts supplied to us by some friends, and obviously the servo direct from the company. It always helps. Okay, so make sure the suspension arms are back where they're meant to be. So our plan is for anything we build that it is custom, we do try to make it almost look like it could have been a factory car. Obviously, we'd love to be able to build these stuff in mass quantities, but it all comes down to time, money, We did have to print these little cups. We actually laid these down trying to make them clear one way, and it didn't quite work, so we ended up having to lift it up back again. So the stock height post from the FFX probably would have worked, but obviously we got carried away and decided to lathe rather than just to move the steering arm. So the steering's back on. Let's bolt our servo back down. So that's our steering back on. Obviously we've still got to remove a little bit of play in here. These aren't the final upper arms. They might be alright, but it's just still a little bit of play on. I think a lot of that's just the way that the steering is, but some of it's the upper arm because it's loose. And check our lock. Still getting our full lock to our lock stoppers, which are just pretty much going to bottom out on the thing. So now we can probably get our upper deck maybe fitted. We might leave our upper deck for now. So we've got to also check our clearance for this to make sure this height of this part is correct, because this mounts off the upper deck, to make sure that this isn't pulling any weird direction. So we're just going to quickly mock up. It's actually pretty good. We were worried that there might have been a gap between the upper deck and here, but just it feels pretty good actually. It doesn't feel like I'm having to press it up. It feels like it's pretty level. So we might just loosely bolt that in and just double check to make sure that it's right. Obviously we've got to reprint one anyway. As you can see, there's a big split in there from the holes being a little bit small, and we did sort of use a little bit of brute force. So that was only a thin mock-up part though as well. So because we knew that we may have to reprint, but it's obviously trying to line that part up on a printed upper deck's a little bit hard because it does flex a bit. So just got that bolted back in. It does feel alright. Sort of just loosely put a screw in there and have a good look. Actually it feels like we might be okay. Sort of spin that by hand, and it doesn't feel like it's binding up or anything, so we might be okay there. So we might be able to leave that as is. So take that back out. Obviously we've got to reprint this part anyway. So while we've got it at this stage, we're going to sort of demonstrate the battery. Now the battery, you may not have seen one of these. It is called a Super Shorty. It took us a long time to find one. We ended up finding a mate who actually brought one of these as when they were on clearance. So the plan for this is it's actually going to fit in there. So once this is in place, once we put the shaft back in, take that out again. Once that's in there, it's going to slide in from there, and it's going to be super, super compact. Obviously we do have our tensioner that then goes on the other side, and that's pretty much what's going to hold it in place. We might put a little bit of foam on the underside of here or something, or make some adjustments to that so it's a really snug fit. So we wanted to run a shorty pack A shorter pack running width-wise was going to mess up with where the steering went and everything else went, and it made it very wide, so this was the best solution. Okay, so now we know that fits, we can start sort of assembling some of the standoffs for our upper deck for our shocks. So 2 blue standoffs. We went with blue with this because the fact our last one was a red one, so we figured red, blue makes sense to sort of do that. So that I think we're pretty good. It doesn't feel like it's got any extra pressure on it. I can roll that very easily. So I think we're onto a winner. Okay, so now we've got to get this main part here reprinted, and that's pretty much it. We've got to get our rear shock made up. For some reason we forgot to get this part made in carbon, so we're just going to leave that off for the time being. We'll get the carbon sorted, we'll get this front part remade, and we'll see you back for part 2. Until then, have a good one.